Good morning, Malta and Gozo, and welcome to another episode of Lovin Daily. My name is Konrad Pule. Today I'm joined by Christian Pergine, and these are your 5 headlines for today. Over 100,000 euros has been stolen in emails and SMS scans since the start of April, according to Malta police. Go has launched its 4-week birth leave for fathers and non-birthing parents. Maltese MEPs are divided on the abortion decriminalisation debate. And St. Paul's Bay has become the 9th village to ban drinking alcohol in public. And lastly, Maltese swimmer Neil Ajus has begun his 3-day challenge of 12-hour warm-ups around Gozo. And make sure to stick around to the end of the episode, where we'll be kicking off Multimodal Week here at Lovin Malta, a series of discussions on Malta's transport industry, with a number of interviews with experts in the industry, from academics to lecturers to deputy directors and even people from Malta Public Transport themselves. It's going to be quite interesting, and today we'll be kicking it off with proposed mass transit, so stick around for that.
So we'll move on to the first story of the day. Over 100,000 euros have been stolen in SMS and email scams. There have been about 200 reports since the beginning of April of people who are saying that money was taken out of their accounts after companies posed as delivery agents of packages, got them to sign up and click a URL and give some sensitive details, personal details, including credit card details. The idea was to unlock a bit of money to be able to get the full package, but this obviously didn't materialize and was a scam, and lots of people have fallen victims of these scams. So the police have issued a bit of a warning about this and said to be really careful when you're inputting any details, even when you're getting into websites that might be taking longer to load or don't feel quite right, like the websites that you're used to. And also, if you feel like you've been victim to a scam, you've got to report immediately to your bank and to the police, so that they can take action. Obviously, this is one of these things, we've seen a lot of scams recently, right?
Absolutely. Cybercrime is on the rise. In fact, Lovin Malta reported a couple of months ago that people's Instagram accounts were being targeted by these scammers. So it's not just emails and SMS, it's in fact through social media. And the PN as well was also a target of these cyber attacks by hackers and whatnot. So obviously now, as the way the world develops more digitally, so does crime as well evolve online, and you have to be more vigilant and careful, and adhere to these kind of advice and points, and really take it more seriously. I don't think we take it as seriously because we don't see it physically and whatnot. It's not tangible.
Until you're a victim.
Until you're a victim and you realize that this stuff is happening online. So please do be careful. Moving on to our second story, telecommunication company Go has just launched an incredible initiative introducing 4-week birth leaves for fathers and non-birthing parents. In a bold move to kind of champion equality, the leading Maltese telecom company will start offering 4 weeks of birth leave to all new fathers and non-birthing parents. This comes after Go's Chief People Officer Sarah Masood told Lovin Malta that some people within her company were feeling discriminated because they weren't allowed enough leave to kind of be with a newborn child. In fact, under Maltese law, you only get 1 day if you're a father or non-birthing parent as leave to be with your child, which I find is absolutely ridiculous. Go a bit further and offer more, but now they've introduced this new initiative where they're offering 4 weeks for the parents, for fathers and non-birthing parents to be with their young ones. You can take this leave, however you feel like throughout the first year of that child's birth. I think it's a great initiative, and it's a bit more meaningful than that, right? Like it's fathers get leave, but also non-birthing parents, which is quite a step forward.
It's a really good move, also in terms of inclusivity, right? Because gay couples or lesbian couples who might be adopting or using surrogacy or using some form of having children in some way might not be registered as the birthing parents, and so they don't get the leave, and now they will, right? So I hope that other companies start to follow suit on this. I think it's a really great initiative. On the complete other side, Maltese MEPs are divided on Malta's abortion decriminalisation debate. So as we know, a couple of weeks ago, MP Marlene Farrugia presented a private member's bill to decriminalize abortion. In Malta, we have a complete abortion ban, and it's criminal. So if someone is found foul of the law, they would go to jail. And we asked the MEPs what they think about this, because as we know in Europe, even in the European Parliament, there's a lot of talk about increasing access to reproductive rights and etc. So what we have from the MEPs is that Roberta Metsola and David Casa from the Nationalist Party have toed the line of the Nationalist Party, and they are against abortion in all of its forms. A similar sentiment was made by Alex Ajus Saliba, a Labour MEP, one of the younger MEPs as well, who is also fully against abortion. But we had a bit of more nuance from people like Cyrus Engere, Alfred Sant and Josiane Cutajar. So Cyrus Engere is saying that he's against the prosecution of women who commit abortions. Alfred Sant is admitting that this is not a black and white issue, and he would like a proper discussion before he takes a stand on the matter. And Josiane Cutajar pointed out something quite interesting, which is that she's in favour of a debate, but pointed out that in Parliament, in Maltese Parliament, the debate is already going to be skewed against women, since there are so few women actually represented in Parliament, something that a recent law is trying to change. We'll see whether that changes at the next election, but women have been given an extra helping hand to try and get to Parliament, and obviously abortion is one of the many issues that affects women, and is likely to be debated in Parliament over the coming years.
Yes, hopefully. We'll see how that develops. Moving on to our fourth story. If you're walking down St. Paul's Bay or the promenade of St. Paul's Bay and you're enjoying a beer, you can now get slapped with a €70 fine after the local council banned drinking in public in St. Paul's Bay. I think it's a new initiative for St. Paul's Bay, which is actually one of Malta's most populous localities, mix of locals, foreigners, tourists, expats, all living there. It tends to get quite dirty as a result of so many people living there, and obviously drinking and on the promenade and in public doesn't help the situation in terms of rowdiness and litter everywhere. But now the local council has made a decision to ban drinking in public, and you will get fined €70 for it. Deputy Mayor Carlos Zarb said that it's a good process, but a good initiative, but there's still much to do, saying that the council would soon provide stickers to every shop selling alcohol to raise awareness about the new law. While it's a great initiative, St. Paul's Bay isn't the first one to introduce it. In fact, St. Julian's, where you have the party hub of Malta, introduced this back in 2008. It was also introduced in Hamrun, Marsa, Msira, Gzira, Sangria and Victoria in Gozo. I think it's a much needed initiative. I think it's great. I don't think the way St. Paul's Bay is the fact that there's so many people there, and it does have an issue with litter and pollution. Something like this, I think, will help fight that issue.
Yeah, and some people obviously disagree with that and argue that it's a bit too restrictive, right? And it's got it depends, but one of the things that is worth noting is that drinking on the beach is not disallowed. Right. So there are certain places where it is disallowed and certain places where it's not. Let us know what you think about this prohibition of sorts on lovinwater.com. We'll move on to the last story of the day before we have our interviews. So Nila Juice, our champion endurance swimmer, began today his warm-up swims around Gozo. So he's going to be doing laps of Gozo for 3 days at 12-hour. It's going to take him 12 hours to go around Gozo each time, and that's being done to train for his big swim at the end of this month, at the end of next month, June, where he's going to be swimming from Tunisia to Sicily. This is a 153-kilometer swim, a world record, and this follows up his other massive swim last year, which was from Sicily to Malta. So yeah, he's going to be, you might, watch him swimming around Gozo along over the next 3 days. We wish him all the best of luck, and we look forward to cheering him on at the end of next month for his biggest swim. Before we move on to the next interviews, we have a video clip about a school that is specialized in autism. We met the teachers, the parents, the owners, and we released a video over the weekend. So just check out this video and we'll move on to the interviews.
It's a magical place and magical things happen, but it's not actually magic. It's based on science, and what we're doing is essentially good teaching.
Down a small, quiet alleyway in Rabat, there's a centre redefining how to approach autism in Malta. After one family experienced the spectrum firsthand, they knew something needed to be done on the island. Welcome to Hand in Hand.
Primarily, we believe and we know, it's not just a belief, that all children can learn. And our philosophy, or what we're trying to do, is we're trying to teach them, train their parents, and essentially give them the skills that they need in order to be able to cope in the community.
The life of an autistic person. There isn't just one problem, two problems, three problems that happen at age 5, 6, 7. It's ups and downs and ups and downs.
Her behaviors are very damaging for her own life, and also for the family life.
No, my daughter does not have autism because I gave her the vaccine. She got all her vaccines, she's safe. Without the vaccine, she would be a child with autism who can basically get measles or get meningitis and, God forbid, pass away. So stop asking parents who have a child on the spectrum, did you give her a vaccine? And then go, okay, that's why. Stop.
We have to be the voice of our children, not anyone else. We have to be the voice of our children.
You go from hoping your child will be a doctor, lawyer, pilot, and then it just you limit it down to having a reasonably happy, independent life. So for me, the best outcome would be that she's happy and she's safe when I'm no longer around to look after her.
The Vassallos had moved to the UK in search of a way to give their son the best possible chances. But they soon returned to the island and decided to create something to help Maltese families.
We need to upskill these kids, and that is what we do. We teach. We break skills down into their parts, and we see what levels the kids are at, and we teach accordingly.
Early intervention is key. As soon as you realize there's a development delay, you need to start intervention.
ABA is the backbone that keeps all these therapies together. And very often I actually ask them to consult with the other therapists so we can find a solution for an issue that she's having. The beauty of it is it just evolves. If there's that problem, we're going to tackle it this way. It's not one size fits all, and it's all results based. So they don't let that problem go until it's, let's use the word, solved.
Before, when we used to put the school uniform on in the morning after the shower, he used to cry and scream a lot and try to take off his uniform. Whereas nowadays, when he sees one of the tutors, his face lights up, she greets him, he greets her.
The best is when we have a child with a lot of behaviours and we see the decrease in the behaviours and the communication increasing. I think to me that is amazing, you know, you're giving the child life skills for life.
It's what I always wanted to see my child. I wanted to see him going to school happy.
Providing life skills to these kids has always been the goal, but there are still some major hurdles, especially when it comes to financing treatment.
I can't stand the fact that because I have a good job and my husband has a good job, then my daughter has a chance.
The only drawback here in Malta, and I don't think it's only Malta though, it's that these kind of therapies, they cost a lot of money. There are some who are privileged and others who aren't.
I don't think it's fair that a parent asks me how much does, you know, a term or whatever cost. And when I mention, they say, oh my God, there's no way I can afford that.
We were lucky because Andrew was chosen and he's being sponsored by the government. I would like to see more children who are sponsored and more help.
I would tell them to get advice, just see how you can help. And make sure you do help them, you know, take them out, don't be shy, be brave, and just do everything you've wanted to do, like you would with any other child, right?
Welcome back to Lovin Daily. We're now kicking off Multimodal Week here at Lovin Malta, where we'll be discussing Malta's transport industry and sector. Today, we're starting with proposed mass transit solutions, stuff like the metro, the bus rapid transit, and even driverless cars. We'll be having a discussion with a number of experts in the industry, from academics to lecturers to people who work in the industry themselves, and even Malta public transport. And we're now joined by three great individuals: Konrad Pule, the General Manager of Malta Public Transport; Maria Attard, from the University of Malta, the Institute for Climate Change and Sustainable Development; and Karl Camilleri, the Deputy Director at MCAS. Thank you all for joining us today. And to kick off this discussion on proposed mass transit solutions, I think a lot of people are super interested to see what Malta's transport industry is like and to hear from three experts. To kick things off, Maria, I want to start with you. For years now, the island has been mulling over answers to Malta's mass transit problems. First off, why does Malta need to find a new public transport system?
Well, public transport systems are the foundation to the efficient movement of people from A to B. Mm-hmm. So we need an infrastructure which is given priority because it is at the top of the chain in terms of how many people it can carry, and it is efficient in terms of emissions, in terms of time. However, it needs to have its own infrastructure. Mm-hmm. And so the idea of moving from what we have today, a bus which has to compete with lots and lots of cars, we need a system which is segregated, a system which has its own infrastructure, its own space, and that can meet its timetables and schedules and basically ferry people efficiently from one place to the other. And
do you guys agree with this? Is I think something that we can all agree on.
Yes, it's very fair.
Absolutely. And Konrad, let's move on to you. Some of the proposed ideas include things like the bus rapid transit, the light rail transit. Briefly, what are these options exactly and how would they work in Malta?
I think one of the most important things to look at is what people need, what people want, what people expect to be able to get from A to B, as Maria said. So if any decision we take in transportation and mobility centers around what we can offer to people, then the solution will most likely work. What we have today is a public transportation system which is based on buses plus other mobility solutions like kick scooters and bikes, which are all growing in their own way. So I think what we need to do is we need to evolve, and to evolve, we need to find that solution that can take what we have today, make it better for the people, make it more attractive, make it compete, as Maria said, more on a level playing field. Today it's very tough, for 400 buses to compete with 400,000 cars in the limited space we have. So any solution that we look at, whether it is light rail, which can be a little bit more rigid, or whether it is bus rapid transit, which is effectively light rail on wheels, and they can look just as sexy as a lovely tram can look. They cover the wheels, in fact, nowadays, just to make them look like a tram. But the solution is, finding that way that people can have a reliable service more than it is today. I'm not saying today is not reliable, but not enough.
Right.
So people are telling us, as a bus company, listen, we want the service to be more reliable. We want to have more frequency. We want to be able to use a service more readily available, So to do that, public transport needs to evolve, and to evolve, it needs to have space on the road, which is dedicated, not necessarily all the way, because you can use technology to give buses priority in a very smart way nowadays. They won't fly yet, but they will use the space in a much more efficient way. But that is how I believe that people will start using public transport even more than they use today.
Absolutely. So this bus rapid transport and the light rail transit are something that could be a potential solution, right? That in the future that we could see being used in Malta. Moving on to our third question, and to stick with you for a second, what are some of the hurdles we would need to overcome to kind of implement these new solutions and in Malta? And maybe other innovative systems that you can think about.
One of the challenges is obviously people's behavior and people's expectations. So if you go to any person, well, most people, and tell them, listen, I'm going to put a bus lane instead of your parking for the cars. I'm going to put a bus lane instead of your lane that you normally use for your daily commute. It's a very difficult subject for people to understand, because they will feel, rightly so, that you're taking space which is for them in their car. So my argument has always been, if we can find ways to take at least the idle cars out of the way. So a lot of parking on the street, for example, just an example. We get those cars to park underground, okay, in a structured way. We're not telling you remove parking, just relocate them. And you free up that space for people. Now we free up that space for people on bicycles, on scooters, on buses, on cabs, on whatever, you're going to make the transportation more attractive, and that will start to trigger people using other forms of transportation more than their car. It's not a matter of not using the car at all. I mean, this is not the philosophy, at least that we believe in. There is space for a car, but there should be space for a bus, for people, for bicycles, for walking. It's a mix. I think people need choice.
But I think that is one of the problems, right? Is the fact that everyone in Malta has a car, or like feels need to have a car, or even more than one car.
I will correct you slightly though. I mean, I cannot argue if they all have a car, but the last surveys that we have done, and it's been consistent for the last 15 years or so, between 50 and 60% of bus users have easy access to a car.
Right.
It's just an example because we have the data.
Okay.
So people might use their car for one type of commute, but then they use the bus for something else, and a cab for something else, and God forbid we walk a bit to get somewhere else, you know, because walking is probably one of the most efficient ways of moving in some places, and then combined with other forms of transport, it could really make a difference.
And we also have space for such infrastructures.
Yes.
It is a misconception that we need to remove parking from everywhere in this island to implement anything else. So there are studies where in certain stretches of roads there is enough space to keep the parking, to keep everyone happy.
So is the major issue then people's behaviour, changing people's behaviour and how they visualise or how they see transportation in Malta, and how do you go about?
But that's a very long term, that's a much longer term solution.
Right.
As my colleague was saying, at the end of the day you need to be able to change people's behaviours, and one of the biggest things is that whether or not we are 400,000 cars plus in Malta to our populations, which is roughly 450,000, so there's more than ample cars. But the problem is, if you want to reduce congestion and therefore utilize more the public transport system, you need people to switch. Now you can't push them to switch from using their private car, which they invested money in, and they have put a lot of effort and a lot of finances into it, to simply just going to use something which is more expensive while the other stays there. You have to incentivize them. You have to use methods like behavior economics, where you push people and you incentivize people, you give them a default, so it's much easier for them to choose that option. And in order to do that, it requires better planning. As Maria said, some of the streets are already there, but better planning, a long-term communications method so that people understand what is best for them and what are the options. Because if you try to disincentivize people financially, it will not work.
I think one thing that would definitely incentivize me is if there's a metro in Malta. I think it would make my life a lot easier coming back and forth from work. Is this at all possible? And if so, how long would it realistically take to build?
Metro is an interesting solution, but it will take very long, because actually to quarry, the difference when you quarry into the European countryside, so to speak, you have a lot of clay. Here in Malta, it's very solid rock. I had experiences, we're working with national companies. When you try to bore tunnels, 3 kilometers can take you a minimum of a year. So you can imagine how long it will take. Plus then you still need to put the infrastructure in it and so on and so forth. And you're still not solving the original solution, which both LRT and BRT, like light rail or bus rapid transport, could solve. The traffic is still, the congestion is still there, the pollution is still there. The aim of the idea of having a mass transport system is to reduce congestion, to reduce pollution, to improve the environment, to give you a better access for more thousands of people to be efficiently serve and go faster from A to B. So a metro per se is an idea, but an LRT and BRT would actually solve the problem here.
And on to our final question, maybe I can get an opinion from both of you on this, from being sustainable development and being obviously an expert in the field. Are there any other interesting forms of kind of mass transit that should also be considered for Malta?
In terms of innovation?
In terms of innovation, in terms of, yeah, exactly.
I think the technologies...
But also from your perspective, obviously being, in the Institute of Sustainable Development and stuff, which would be most sustainable,
Well, if we had to look at the most innovative way of doing it, which is technically not innovative from a planning point of view, but certainly innovative for Malta, is to try and develop a plan where we actually see people needing less and less to travel. So we start streamlining our land use development, allow for greater activity within the centers so that people can shop in the centers, don't need to go far, and they can walk and they can cycle. And then think of developments. I mean, if you look at the latest, you know, light rail on rubber, on wheels, they look really, really nice and really fancy. You know, the shiny stuff that everyone likes to implement. So the technology today is way in advance. You know, now we're talking about drone deliveries, we're talking about autonomous vehicles, we're, you know, implementing hopefully soon an autonomous bus on the roads, trying that. So we have a lot of opportunity, but we need to be prepared for that. We still are not prepared to take on the technologies. We still, you know, stick to the old technology, the car, even older, the second-hand car. So we have a lot of opportunity here to ride on the technologies that already are existing and developing today. And why not? Maybe be actually a lab and experiment for the newer technologies, the newer ideas. So I don't think there should be any limitation. I think the limitations are within ourselves, not having the vision and the you know, the
ambition.
The ambition to try, yeah.
Absolutely. Carl, anything to add? Or?
Yes, I mean, I agree with what Professor Attard just said. Transit-oriented development is very important. You have to plan forward, understanding that there needs to be this, but we need to build on what we have already. During the pandemic, for example, the use of internet technology has reduced meetings, face-to-face meetings considerably. Why don't we implement that? Furthermore, multimodal transport. I was just talking here with Mr. Pule about the new ferry they're launching, and it needs multimodal transport. That means you can actually use different types of transport to take you from A to B, but they have to be there. They have to be planned. So in actual fact, if all this works together, it could actually give us a much more efficient way of transportation.
Absolutely. And Konrad, just to end with you, anything to add from, you know, Malta public transport perspective? Any interesting forms of mass transit? You've already introduced the new ferry and the autonomous bus, but is anything else you feel like Malta needs at this moment?
I mean, we're not introducing ferry ourselves. We're facilitating the integration with the ticketing, you know, and the technology side. But I think that is one last point I wanted to mention. People's behavior, from what we've seen, can be influenced significantly with the use of technology, with mobile phones. So if you throw a new app out there, if you throw new technology out there, when we launched, for example, real-time information on the bus arrival, that changed people's behavior. They started using different routes because it makes more sense to get from one place to another. So I think that with all this interconnectivity that we're talking about, and having all these different modes of transport connected into one set of technology which is easy to use, I'm pretty sure that people will feel even more comfortable making that change depending on the needs of that particular commute. So I think mass transit will happen in Malta. It's something that we do need. Whether we need to look at a solution of that's going to take us 10 to 20 years to implement, I'm not saying we shouldn't. There's a study taking place by government. I look forward to seeing it. But in the meantime, I think something needs to take place, and we need to start evolving our current services that we have across the board to give people a more efficient way of getting from A to B to C to D and whatever.
Absolutely. Konrad, Karl, Maria, thank you so much for joining us today and to discuss proposed mass transit solutions. It seems like there is a vision there, it just needs some work and to get there, but definitely things are in the process of being done. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and make sure to stick around throughout the week for our discussions on multimodal transport. Tomorrow we'll be discussing shared mobility, so stuff like carpooling and scooters, so make sure to tune in for that, and have a great day full of lovin'.